Thank you for joining me for our Checkology preview. The News Literacy Project is a nonpartisan education nonprofit filled with free resources, supports, and lessons. We help people discern fact from fiction and the news and other information that they consume and share. Our resources are all free. Our lessons explore a variety of news and media literacy subjects such as credibility, validity, accuracy, and bias. Go ahead and access that resource doc that you see on the screen. It has links to all I will be sharing and more. So thinking about our mission and vision ultimately is that students are skilled in news literacy before they graduate high school. That is our hope and it is our dream. Now, news literacy does find itself underneath the media literacy umbrella. I want to call out that second text paragraph. It is an approach that teaches the how to think about news and information, not what to think. This does support students' independent thinking. It is a dedication to the First Amendment and the conviction that a free press is a cornerstone of our democracy. For you, we have created a news literacy hub. Content that students see online can have a real life impact, and you can boost students' resilience against health and science misinformation. This hub features a 5-week brain gains planner of classroom activities to help students resist health rumors and prioritize their mental wellness. By completing weekly exercises, students can strengthen their ability to evaluate claims, understand data, spot bias, and navigate algorithms and AI. You can check that out. The link on the screen, I'll put that in the chat as well. And again, this is a hub for you, a timely hub with supports and curated resources. And of course, this comes from all the things that we have for you. So I will be going over Checkology during our time together. I am going to give a hat tip to the SIFT because that is a fantastic newsletter. I encourage you to check it out. You can subscribe to our newsletters with the link in the chat, and you can get to all of that from newslit.org. Again, just-in-time support, fantastic resource. But during our time together, I am going to focus on Checkology, and I'll give you a quick peek at our resource library. You can register for a free Checkology account at checkology.org. Once you do that, this is what you'll see in your dashboard. You're able to go to the Resources tab. So after you create your account, click on the Resources tab, and from there you're going to see topic, grade level, duration, type, subject area, and standards. So the resource library is filled with hundreds of supports, slide decks, lesson plans, infographics, and posters. Specifically, I wanted to share with you infographics and posters just because this connects to that hub that I mentioned earlier that we have for you, the Wellness Hub. So looking at this infographic, 6 things to know about AI. We know generative AI tools are not objective, reliably factual, of course, and we know it's not all bad, but content is easier than ever to create and fake. It signals a change in the nature of evidence, and reputable sources matter more than ever. And this is why news and media literacy is truly so important. There is hope. We have resources to help with all of this and more. And so I want to call out Checkology, the content tab. So this is one example of what you can see in the infographics and posters section, and there's so much more. But this does connect to today's theme. So looking at that content tab, you're signed into Checkology and you click on content. Checkology is our free comprehensive online lesson platform. It's designed to supplement curriculum. Again, register for that free account at checkology.org. And this is really for students 5 through 12. The resource library does have elementary supports, but the lessons I'm about to show you really are for middle school and high school. The lessons, 20 plus, are cross-curricular. So ELA, social studies, civics, STEM teachers, teacher librarians, all utilize our content. There are extension activities in addition to the lessons you see. And note that the lessons are taught by subject matter experts and include formative assessments. This really is supplemental, meant to enhance, to be integrated into what you're teaching, to help you meet those curricular objectives that you have for your students. I am going to address and highlight 3 lessons before I show and share how to set up a class. So first off, making sense of data. In this lesson, students explore how we create, interact with, and are influenced by data in all aspects of our lives. And they learn how to evaluate the accuracy of data-based claims and visualizations. Evaluating science-based claims. This lesson, students learn to recognize science-based claims and assess their credibility. They explore why people resist science and gain the skills to evaluate science journalism. And lastly, introduction to algorithms. This is where students dive into the world of algorithms and generative artificial intelligence as they weigh the civic and social impact of these technologies. So come with me. I am going to go live and get into Checkology. So if you haven't already, I encourage you to register for a free account at checkology.org. It's rather simple. You can use your single sign-on. You can use Clever. We do have Clever integration. Of course, you can just use your email and a password if that's what makes sense for you. But we do have all of those options. Again, Clever integration, single sign-on with Google and with Microsoft, or you can choose email password. And that, again, is at checkology.org. All right, friends, here we are. We're at my dashboard. And so this is what you see when you sign in. You see some featured resources, that SIFT newsletter that I mentioned earlier. You can access it from Checkology. You can also subscribe so you get that in your inbox during the school year at the start of the week. And that includes 2 slide decks that have proven to be gems for educators wanting to integrate news and media literacy. I'm going to take us to the resources tab. So resources tab, you heard me talk about the hub, and we have brain gains there. I called that out at the start. So you can search brain gains here in this resources tab, and you can see all of those resources that have been collected and curated for you that honor the idea and theme of wellness. So check that out. I encourage you to search in the resources tab, again, brain gains, so you can find those resources there. And of course, you'll see those in when you go to the hub and to that link I shared with you. All right, so let's get into the lesson, making sense of data. This is taught by statistician journalist Cece Way, and it is a fantastic lesson that, just as I described, it really gets students thinking about how is data collected, how is data represented, and really what is the best data to support a claim. We're just going to watch a little bit of this video. Note that I'm on element 23 of 36. So those dots at the bottom are called elements. Here's Cece. We're just going to watch just a little bit so you can get a taste and feel for this lesson.
When people interpret and present data, there is usually something specific that they want to show. One of the most common things people draw out of a data set is what's typical or normal. How fast do people generally drive down this road? How long does it take people to recover from this illness? How much time do people spend looking at their phones? One way to represent this central tendency is by calculating something called the mean. What's more commonly referred to as the average. To find the mean, or average, of a data set, you just add up all the numbers and then divide it by how many there were. This works well when numbers are distributed pretty evenly across a set. But when there are major outliers, or numbers way outside the range of the other numbers in the set, the mean isn't such a great representation of the middle. For example, check out this data set showing the annual income of 5 graduates of the geography program at the University of North Carolina. To find the average of this set, we'd add them all up and then divide by 5. And we get a mean of, let's see, $26,058,600.
And we know that that's skewed, right? Because of the outlier. I don't know if anybody has a guess about who the outlier is in this data set, what is skewing this average. Famous basketball player. And I'll let you think on that for a brief moment. Famous basketball player, geography major, UNC. And now, the big reveal.
Not too shabby. But wait, Is that really representative of the income of geography majors at UNC? Clearly not, because there's some guy named Michael Jordan whose income is such an extreme outlier that it's pulling the whole average way up. When there's a big outlier in the data, or when the data distribution is uneven, using something called the median.
And then Cece continues diving into the median. So really this lesson starts with the basics, and then it just continues to get complex. And you'll notice that with all the lessons, they start foundational and then they build upon one idea to the next. And I mentioned that all of our lessons have formative assessment. So here's an example. Students are asked, which would be better, the mean or the median for this question. And the follow-up to this formative assessment is for them to explain their answer. So what a great practice in mathematical thinking to support one's ideas when it comes to making this determination. Now, here's another example of a formative assessment. Which of the following ads represents the most savings in dollars? So students would need to read, consider, and then select. And you can tell that this is an auto-graded response. When students select and hit next, they get instantaneous feedback. Of course, there are some open-ended questions where a teacher could weigh in on those student responses, but the majority are right there answers. The next lesson I want to highlight for you is evaluating science-based claims. And what you see here would be the selection of resources. When you're in that resources tab, you're able to search by lesson, and it collects all the supports that go with each lesson. So you can see we have a full transcript, a lesson guide, and an answer key. So if you need that full transcript, whether that's for language acquisition, modifications and accommodations, or even just transparency, you have the transcript. In addition to that lesson guide, which includes a word wall, an outline, essential questions, and objectives. So from here, you can see some of those objectives and essential questions, but that lesson guide really is the overarching guide document that includes all the things that you might want to make that determination of how the lesson could fit into what you're doing with your students. All right, group, evaluating science-based claims. So Melanie Tracy-King, she is a scientist, a science professor. She walks students through a floater method, and this is just for evaluating claims. And so it's an acronym, and each letter, of course, stands for something. And we're going to focus on the L, the logic aspect. So this is 43 elements long. And I want just to share that when you think about these lessons, these full lessons that I'm highlighting, they can last anywhere between 2 to 4 45-minute class periods, really dependent on your facilitation. All right, so let's hear from Melanie as she's going to talk about logic.
The L in floater stands for logic. The reasoning behind a scientific claim must be logical, meaning it must avoid committing something called logical fallacies, basically mistakes in thinking. It's easy to say and really difficult to do because we're all vulnerable to these flawed ways of thinking. There are way too many logical fallacies for me to list them all right now, but here are 4 I'd like you to keep on your radar. First is mistaking correlation for causation. If 2 things are correlated, it just means they are connected in some way. Ice cream sales and swimsuit purchases go up and down together, but neither causes the other to happen. We're all vulnerable to making this mistake, particularly if it's a first-hand experience. If we do a new handshake with our teammates before a game and then win, that is not evidence that the handshake had anything to do with the win. Second is the appeal to emotion. We're all vulnerable to having emotions like fear or anger sidetrack our logical thinking. Claims like big pharma sells us poisons that make us sick to create more customers, or the medical industry doesn't want you to get better, are designed to convince us of something by appealing to our emotions, in this case, our fear, instead of providing evidence. The third is the appeal to nature. We're tempted to think things that are natural, are safe, or even good for us. Marketers know this, which is why they often position all natural as a selling point and cast doubt on things that are synthetic, artificial, or processed. But there are lots of natural things in the world that are harmful and dangerous. Poison ivy and arsenic are natural, so are shark bites for that matter. The fourth and final logical fallacy to look out for is the appeal to tradition. Cures and other solutions that have a long history can seem trustworthy purely based on how long they've been around. For example, if someone says, "My family has been using honey to treat seasonal allergies for 4 generations," there must be something to it. Not necessarily. To know if something works or not, we need solid evidence, and tradition by itself isn't evidence. Remember, we're all vulnerable to these common mistakes in reasoning, but we're especially vulnerable to them when we want to believe something, or when someone is searching for a way to persuade us.
Okay, so we get introduced to some logical fallacies, and here would be the formative assessment where we are matching claims to the fallacy that it demonstrates. And once we've done that, we hit next. Again, that's an auto grade. So again, that goes with the floater method. Melanie talks about that acronym and dives into each letter of floater to help students evaluate science-based claims. So that's just a taste of that lesson. Engaging, you see it's multimodal. Um, the teaching aspect is definitely digestible. Those videos are short in nature, and it does follow the backwards design format. So we have concept introduced, we have driving essential questions, really helping students with their learning, using those formative assessments along the way to check in with their understanding. Now, I have pulled up the resource lesson guide for you for Introduction to Algorithms. So you can see what that looks like. We know that Miyasato is our subject matter expert. We get our about overview. We see those objectives. We see those essential questions I mentioned. And I am going to call this one out because I would love if all students could answer this. How much influence do algorithms have in my life? Of course, they have to understand something about algorithms to be able to answer and know their influence. As I scroll, you'll see the lesson outline. This lesson dives into not only the basics of algorithms, what are they, how do they work, but it gets into the attention economy, pitfalls, bias, rabbit holes, feedback loops, and then we get into generative AI. So that's where I'm going to bring us to. I'm going to take us to chapter 5, right when we meet Jen. Now, Jen is generative AI personified, just as we have Algo, who is algorithm personified. I'm going to take you when we meet Jen in this lesson. So, Introduction to Algorithms, chapter 5. Notice I am on element 29 of 41. And here we go, group. Generative AI.
Oh, it looks like 2 things in your cart are now available for a lower price. Mia, this is Jen. Short for generative AI. She's so cool. If you thought the things I could do were impressive, just wait till you see what Jen can do. Bye. You want to see the Mona Lisa playing an electric guitar? But painted in the style of Van Gogh? Or comic book?
How did you...
How about a research paper on Toni Morrison? The War of 1812? Molecular biology?
Not bad, but you didn't include any citations or sources.
Done. Included the sources you asked for.
Wait a minute. Toni Morrison isn't from Illinois, she's from Ohio. And for this paper on the War of 1812, you cite a New York Times article, but did they actually even publish that?
Okay, so the lesson continues, talking more about generative AI, what it can do. And it really is engaging, and there is definitely an entertaining element to this lesson. I wanted to show you this open-ended formative assessment because at the conclusion of this lesson, students are able to answer this question. They're able to answer and argue the potential risks and benefits of generative AI using what they learned during the lesson to support their claims. So it starts out foundational, but it builds upon each aspect until they get to generative AI. So truly they understand what it is and they understand those risks and benefits, can make that determination for themselves. And speaking of determination for themselves, I appreciate how this lesson concludes. So after all of this learning, students are equipped with the ability that students understand how they can use algorithms to their own advantage. And this asks them to speak intention to what will they do? What can they do to improve the quality of the content that comes into their feeds, to improve their algorithm? So there's a list on the screen. Students can think through that, but you can tell from this end formative assessment that students have learned about this throughout the course of Introduction to Algorithms. So those are just highlights of some lessons that you can find in the hub, that you can find in that resource that support wellness, that we have curated and collected for you. I want to show and share how to set up a class for you now. So if you haven't already signed up for a free account, I encourage you to do so. Checkology.org. Checkology.org. You get that free account. You can use Clever, single sign-on, email, and password. Once you do that, you go to My Classes. That's what I'm in right now. You can see all my classes. My Clever friends, you will have students already rostered once all that process is complete. So you will probably see these boxes with the name of your class or however your district names your groups. I will tell you when you fit into the start of the class because you already have this, and then we're going to view and edit a course. My other friends in this space, those of you that are using single sign-on are going to or have students, you're going to create accounts for students. We need to go to the plus sign. So add a class. We're going to add a class. We need to name it, and everybody will always need to name the class because that will save it in your account for always. It'll ask us to rename once we edit too, so you'll see that in just a moment. So we're teaching middle school. I'm going to go with 7th grade, and I'm going to go with ELA. Course lock, what that means is that students complete those lessons in the order that you assign. Your advanced settings, I do want to show you that. The pre and post assessment, 15 questions. I love data. Leave that on if you want to collect some data to see growth as your students complete these news and media literacy lessons. If there isn't time, turn that off. Also, one-to-many lesson mode. This is where you toggle that on. So you can toggle it on now, but just know after you decide what lessons you want students to have, you need to come back to this advanced settings, and then you need to check those lessons that you want to be a one-to-many mode. And you might be wondering, well, what is that? That's when you want to be the pilot car. You are the one showing the video, just like I did for us. You're showing the video on your overhead projector to your screen, and then students don't have the video on their screens, but they have the formative assessments. So you would show video, stop, have class discussion, whatever makes sense for your room, and then students could complete the formative assessments on their own device. There's a lot of reasons that people choose to go that route. One would just be that facilitation preference, wanting to stop and engage throughout the video. Could also be bandwidth in your school. Perhaps 30 some computers on the same thing at the same time just isn't feasible. So either way, just note that is an option. So once you have what you want to have for those settings, you're good to go. Create class. When we create a class, I like to get content before I get my kids in. So I'm going to go to assign course. This is where we're going to either customize, change it, or we can start from scratch. I'm going to customize it. And my clever friends, this is basically where you're with me. So you've gone to edit course, you've decided to customize a course, and we're all on the same page now. So we're going to call it whatever you want to call it, description, and we save. Again, this is so I can use it next semester, I can use it next year. Super intuitive group, content library on the left, your course on the right. So I mentioned those full-on lessons, 2 to 5 2 to 4 45-minute class periods right there. There's also practice and extensions, exactly as their name. They practice and extend the learning. And there's fact checks. You have so much here at your fingertips to support and integrate into your class to supplement your curriculum. It is definitely a treasure trove. So looking over here, this is what you have already. If there's things in there that you don't want, you just hit X and it's out. If there's something over here that you want to drag it over. And this is auto-saved. At any time, you can edit your course to add more content or take something away. So just know that it auto-updates for your students as you are doing it. All right, so there's our class. We go back to practice 22. We can see, we can preview the course, see what students have access to. And reminder, they're completing in order of those lessons, the order that you set for them. Now, you might wonder how to get kids in. So if you're not a Clever group and you don't have Clever at your district, you can get students in 2 other ways. So I'm going to find my practice 22 right here, and I'm going to manage students. When I manage students, I get back to that screen. I'm going to add students, invite students to join. It's a link you post in your LMS, that easy, and they can use their single sign-on, Microsoft or Google. Or if that's not an option for you, the other option is that you manually add students. So you just put their names in an identifier, and then you are emailed their login credentials. So we don't even need student emails if that does not work for your district. So 3 ways to get kids to content. Clever would be one, single sign-on, or you're adding students directly. And that's how you set up your class. That's how you get your kids to the lessons you want them to have around news and media literacy. So, group, our time's coming to a close. I've shared with you a variety of resources, and I just want to end with the wellness website that I had put in the chat earlier, the hub for you. So there's a planner here that you are able to utilize. You can see our webinars that we've had, and you're able to watch a recording, of course. And you have even support for getting started with Clever, but download the planner right here. And there's the brain gains. Lessons that you can use all around wellness. So lessons and ideas, infographics, extensions, and more. So check that out. I hope this helps. I'm happy to answer questions at the conclusion. And of course, thank you for joining me as I help you help your students grow their news and media literacy muscles.